Welcome to Born to Hustle. I am your host, Roham Carrier, and I'm here with Phillip Hernandez. He's a business operations consultant, and he's been doing it for how long would you say, Phillips?
Well, first off, Ron, thank you so much for having me. But yeah, I started my own practice in March, but so just this year, been doing it for like 6 months.
6 months?
But I've been like, you can think of me as a business operations consultant in like a fractional COO, and I've been doing operations since, oh man, my first executive role as an operator was at CodeUp in 2016. So I've been doing it since then. That's really where I got my operations chops under my belt. I started getting some reps. That's when I got introduced to organizational operating systems, and I implemented the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS.
Mm-hmm.
I implemented that at CodeUp, and I really just got into the whole idea of operating systems and how you run your organization. And then went over to Geekdom, implemented EOS over at Geekdom, and now that's what I'm doing. I've started a whole practice around building your own operating system and then implementing that into your organization.
You definitely have some experience behind your belt, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that was actually gonna be my first question in this podcast. I was actually gonna ask you, what was it that ignited the hustle? Like, now that you're doing this as your own individual practice, I guess I would twist the question more towards like, what really ignited the hustle for be your own practice rather than actually doing it within other, big time organizations out there? Like, what would you say that ignited that hustle?
That's a great question. So my first, I've kind of always known I wanted to get into business operations, and I think that I didn't know that that's what it was called, or that's what it really was that I was attracted to, until I did an internship in 2006.
Whoa!
I did an internship in Disney World, and it was the Disney College program, and going to a place like that, I just wanted to see what made this machine work. Like, I saw the impact that Disney would make and the company and the experience that it would make on their guests, but then seeing behind the scenes, which in that case, it truly was behind the scenes. Like in Disney, at least in Disney World, I worked in the parks, right? In Disney World, they treat it very much like a performance, like a show. And so their customers, they call them guests, right? And their employees, they call them cast members. And so when you're customer facing, when you're in front of the guests, you're considered on stage. And when you're not customer facing, you're considered backstage. And that concept of like, this is a performance and there's all these things that happen behind the scenes, that just blew my mind. So I got really excited about, I would see the people's faces when they would come to Disney World, and there'd be like the oohs and ahs about the fireworks and like the shows and all these things. And for me, I realized that being on the other side of it, because I grew up going to Disney World and I would have that experience, but being on the other side of it, I was really just blown away by like, how do they move all these people? Like, if the parade ends now and then the fireworks happen right here, so everybody comes to this one area, how do they move everybody out in a timely manner and nobody gets hurt? And there's all these things that they do that are seemingly coincidental, but they're very intentional. Like, they'll keep these shops open at certain times, or they'll direct traffic going this way. And so that's when I started to really enjoy the operations behind an organization. When I went over to CodeUp, and I had my first like actual executive operator role, that's when I realized that that's a very lonely place, right? Like, just being an executive operator, if you're a VP of operations or a COO, or oftentimes everybody reports to you, or you report up, or you report up, and so you don't really have too many people next to you to like peers to like go over issues with it from an operations perspective.
Yeah.
So when I got exposed to EOS, an operating system, that helped me so much because as an operator, I struggled with thinking that, you know, we're not meeting these goals because the people aren't doing it, or I would be asked like, how come we're not meeting this metric, and I didn't really have a good answer for it. When I started implementing an organizational operating system that was backed by data, then I actually had metrics to follow. I had processes in place to follow, and that was just a huge revelation for me. That was a big pivot a turning point in my career. So I did that at CodeUp, and then I went over to Geekdom and did the same thing. And at Geekdom, well, with EOS in particular, it takes a good 10 to 18 months from implementation before you actually start seeing real traction. And because it takes a long time to build the processes, build the structure, make sure you have all the right people in the right seats. But then once I implement all of that and things are rocking and rolling, so like at Geekdom, for instance, we, Charles and I, he's the CEO over at Geekdom, we built out a 10-year picture. So we have a 10-year vision. And we knew at Geekdom in particular, we were there to build San Antonio one startup at a time. And our goal was to build the next 500 startups within the next 10 years, with 75% calling San Antonio home. So if we know that and we set those metrics and we have that target, then we can work backwards and see if that's where we need to be in 10 years, then where do we need to be in 3 years? If that's where we need to be in 3 years, where do we need to be in 1 year? And so on, so on. So where do we need to be in the next 90 days? And we can build out goals that way. And I realized that I really love that part. I really love building out this structure. I don't really get as excited about maintaining the organization, right? I want to build a system, implement that system, and hopefully that's long lasting and I won't have to be there forever. And a lot of organizations, especially an organization like Geekdom, like CodeUp, just smaller organizations, specifically startups too, you don't always need an executive operator, but it does help to have an executive operator to come in, help build strategy in, chunks. And so when I realized that, that was really the thing that ignited me thinking I don't know that I want to go out and be a traditional COO. What I do like is I like chaos. I like when
you love it when everything is out of place and
yes.
People are confused.
Yes.
Somebody's burning alive.
Yes.
And they're just like, well, where's the fire extinguisher?
That's
Wait,
right.
let's import the system first before we actually turk it out.
Yeah.
And
because I like pivots, merger acquisition, new C-levels coming in, but when we have to figure out how to turn the ship around, that's what I really get excited about. And I realize that if that's the work that I want to do, then I need to be my own entity that can be deployed for certain seasons with different organizations.
So now everything is coming together of why you ignited the hustle. Everything within your experience is good. So it's like you did the experience, you loved it, you became better at it, you loved it even more. So it sounds like you fell in love with it even more.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like multiple times.
Yeah.
So, and that alone, eventually you wanted to basically have control of how you want to do it, and therefore you decided to ignite the hustle and create it, becoming a consultant.
Yeah, I really enjoy helping to solve problems. And, what I do as a consultant is I help you define your mission so you can achieve your vision. And so I really enjoy talking to a visionary, talking to a founder, a CEO. And I've realized that one of my strengths is I can understand what your vision is, and then I can work with you to help draw a map to take you from where we're at today to where that destination that lives in your head, where that is. And the way we can do that is by building a system to get us there.
Because systems is the ones that create results.
That's right.
Yes. I actually live by that motto. If all the business that I've ever created, I always want to import a system, even though it's just as SMB, like a small business, or even it means that it's the beginning. Would you disagree or agree that having a system in place is the way to go in order for you to grow as a business instead of just winging it?
150,000%. That's the way to go. And that's one of the things that I work with founders and CEOs today on is that like, oftentimes we believe that what makes a healthy organization is the people behind it. And this framework that I'm working on now, that I'm working with now, it's called Six Levers. And Six Levers is a framework that you can use to build and implement your own organizational operating system. And I am a huge believer. I love Six Levers. I've fully bought into the framework and the ideology. I'm a licensed Six Levers consultant, and one of the ways that Six Levers talks about why you need a organizational operating system is because oftentimes we leave these big, like strategic things up to chance. And, if there's a spectrum of accidental to intentional, we want to help move that needle from your organization being set up, just winging it, just hoping that it's just going to work out, into an intentional system. So we put intentionality behind what it is we're going after, when we're going to reach that, and how we're going to get there. I think that there's definitely organizations that get by and that make it by just winging it, but I think that's only to a certain point. I think if you really want to make traction, if you really want to move the needle forward, having those big dreams and that big vision, you have to put some kind of system in place that helps you at least realize what that goal is and realize what it takes to get there, so you understand your capacity, your challenges, your barriers, all of those things.
Okay, that's awesome. And you mentioned that you're licensed within the Six Levers operating system, right?
Yep.
That means that there's definitely an industry. And if that's the case, what will be the question that I'm trying to get at here? Will be, what is the industry like that you're into? And what is a key insight of the industry now that you're on it, right? Because I noticed that some people want to, let's just say that someone wants to become like you.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, you can go to YouTube, you can Google stuff, you can probably ask a friend or two how to get into it. You might find out, right? I mean, if you really want to do it, you're going to find out, right?
For sure.
However, once you're in it, you're bound to find out even more that you're not going to find out unless you actually do it. Does that make sense?
100%.
So now that you actually have done it and you have gone through it and you're licensed and everything, what would be a key insight that you would have wished you would have known when you started doing it? That maybe would have helped you out, or would have leveled you up a lot faster, or maybe it could have changed your mind of being a licensed six-level operations consultant. But I mean, I already went so far. I might as well continue. Like sometimes there's something that ignites the hustle. You might regret it, but it doesn't matter. You're already so in. Why not?
Yeah. It's funny you asked that. That happened to me. When I was at CodeUp and I got introduced to EOS, I was really bought into EOS, and I thought that's what I want to be. I want to be an EOS implementer, and which is an operations consultant, but specifically with the EOS operating system. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to do. I had my sights set on it. I built my own personal and professional career goals around becoming an EOS consultant. I mean, one of the, I love working with Charles and the team over at Geekdom. I love the organization and the community. And one of the things that got me so excited about working with them is that they wanted to enhance their implementation of EOS. And so I wanted to do that because that aligned with my track on becoming an EOS implementer. Well, about halfway through that, EOS changed their model of how they work with consultants, and it didn't align with the way that I saw becoming a consultant. So I did have to make a pivot. I had to really figure out, is this something that I really want to do? Did I have everything just contingent on if EOS was the right thing or not? And I think, what helped me is I have a lot of great people around me that, have just let me ride on the shoulders of those giants to understand what lies ahead of me. And so I think if I can give advice on that, it would be, don't be so rigid on what your end goal is, right? And also surround yourself with your own personal board of directors, your own personal group of people who will give you honest feedback, fearless feedback. That's not always
Yes,
sunshine and
yes,
rainbows.
yes. I have one specifically in mind I can think about right in my head.
Yeah, and that'll just really give you what it is that you need, and I think those things just really help me to hone in on what it is I want to do, and yeah, how I want to do it. But yeah, I think that's the advice I would give. I think something else too that has really helped me become an operations consultant. I don't think I could have done this. No, I know I couldn't have done this if I didn't have the experience of my clients. So my clients are other C levels, operators, founders. I had to have that experience of being in their shoes, and I think that's something um, that I really hold close to my heart as one of my strengths. Is I've been in every role of an organization. I've been an unpaid intern that's hoping to get a job. I've been an individual contributor, a shift lead, manager, director, seniors, VP, C level. I've held all of those roles, and so I understand. I have a deep understanding of how transparency, understanding the direction of your organization, the mission, the vision. I really know how that affects everybody at these different levels. So although I probably could have just found something like Six Levers, gone through the requirements and trainings and paid what I needed to become a licensed consultant, I wouldn't be as good of a consultant as I am today. I wouldn't have that confidence. I wouldn't have those skills if I hadn't gone through it myself, right? The reason why I really believe in organizational operating systems is because I've been in an organization as an operator where we didn't have that. And then when we did, it just changed.
Oh, that is insane. I
Yeah.
was literally just about to ask you more about, like, you said that because of your clients, you basically have learned more in depth that you would have done just by getting licensed. And I was gonna ask you, like, to give us an example or two, like, especially that I know that you work on the C level, and not a lot of people have that opportunity, let alone to even know what it means to be up there. So can you give us more insight about that?
Um, like what it's like to be a C
Yeah,
level.
I want to know because I'm
Uh,
curious. Because I mean, I've been in so many roles myself,
yeah,
wearing all the hats sometimes at the same time, and
yeah,
sometimes I'm wearing a different hat depending on the month.
hmm
I run a contracting business, and that's in South Texas. And there's times I was the door-to-door guy, even though that
yeah,
was never my job. But I was out there, and I wanted to, because when I was creating my own operating system, and I'm not licensed,
hmm
but I was just an entrepreneur who wanted the system because I remember I met someone like you, licensed completely different. And he told me systems create results. So you can be having the most, because I told him that the way I used to do is by having a productivity system. And it's like, hey, carry on, like that's cool and all, but if you don't have an operating system, like it doesn't matter. You are good to go. What about your team? Well, my team should be disciplined. Uh huh. Really? Interesting. So you're just assuming that they're just gonna have a productivity system, and I'm like, why wouldn't they? And he's just like, come on, there's no way you really believe that. And I'm like, I do. Look at my team, and that's because he saw my team were actually good. They were good people.
yeah.
They were all, because I was picky about it, right? And they were all have their own discipline. They work hard and they do their best. But I've noticed that as I roll to each individual hat, having an operating system before I imported, like it was just me doing the different hats. But once we created the operating system, and I'm not gonna pretend it was the best, it was just good enough.
Yeah.
It was better than nothing. It shifted completely. The productivity increased. I remember the metrics on the first month, and that was like sometime in 2022. No, I lied to you. 2021. It was even further before that. And I remember he told me like, "Hey, look at the metrics." And I go in, I log in, productivity 784%, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like, what do you mean? What does this mean? And he just
Yeah.
shows me like, now look at the relativity, and I'm like, sales went up by 364%. I'm like everything was way beyond 100%.
Yeah.
And it looked one of those numbers that it was just unreal to me. So I wanted to know if you had a similar experience, now that you have gone through individual levels, and have you ever imported the system and dramatically seeing a difference compared to not having it?
100%.
One,
Every time.
every time?
Every time I've implemented an operating system, we've seen, insane results that are tangible, that are measurable. You had asked what it's like to be a C-level, and man, I think if I can answer that in just one thing that I learned so much about that. I knew going into something like that, especially any kind of leadership, fundamentally a leader is somebody who needs to, make decisions. And oftentimes those decisions, they're going to affect others, right? Usually when it comes down to a C-level making that decision, it's because either it's a high-profile decision, the impact is going to be high-profile, or it's because nobody else has made that decision, and it might be a tough decision to make. And that was something that even though I knew going into leadership I was going to come across that where, feelings are going to be hurt, lives are going to be impacted, the bottom line is going to be impacted, metrics are going to be impacted. Even though I knew that going in, I didn't anticipate the challenges that would come along with that. Being a C-level versus other leadership roles that I've had, C-level is a very visible role. I was the COO of Geekdom starting in March of 2020, and right when the pandemic started.
Oh no,
And
that's right. So you probably imported when everything, like, you're gonna make changes, but guess what? The world is changing. You're gonna adapt along with
the
it.
whole world's changing. That was a really interesting way to become a COO because, talk about having challenges as an operator of a co-working space where people can't gather. And it was, that's a really difficult thing to do. But, and the decisions that you make, no matter which way you go, somebody's not going to be happy with that. And like I said, it's a public thing. When I wasn't a C-level and I could make a decision and, it wasn't that big of a deal, but
No,
like,
1,000%.
yeah, but
and something I learned is that sometimes the people at the bottom, they never are happy at the decision on the top, but they have no idea what's going on at the top.
yeah, or and I really understood the obligation and the responsibility of the access and information that I had at that level. And so I had to be really careful about that. There's a fine line between delivering transparency to your organization and oversharing, right? Because
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
yeah, like
yes.
if I'm in a board meeting for Geekdom and we're talking about board level decisions, and I know that there's a decision that's being made that's going to impact the rest of the organization, I have to figure out, there's the balance between the part of me that wants to be transparent with the team and the part of me that, needs to hold my responsibility and obligation to not overshare. And, that was a challenging thing too, because, especially if your team sees things that are happening and you can't really speak to those.
Yes, I know what you mean. They see the chaos or they have their own opinion,
Yeah.
and you can see that, like, no, it's not really like that, but you kind of have to, just, live with it in a way. Like, I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, I think for me anyway, the way that I dealt with that is through an operating system. Because with the operating system, you really lay out your mission, your vision, your values, your beliefs, the issues that your company's facing. Through an operating system, you build out a 3, 5, 10-year plan. You really have your 1-year goals in front of you. You understand what quarterly objectives you have to hit and what those key results are to make sure that you've hit those things. When you have all of that, and all of that stuff is agreed upon, understood, and accessible by the rest of the organization, then you have less of the lack of trust. So when the rest of the organization might see things changing, they have that trust in you that you as their leader will go and do the right things with, their best interest in mind and not like worry that you're scheming about something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 1000%. Because I don't know if you can disagree with this, but I know sometimes it's easier because I know everybody has a story.
Mhm.
For let's just say they didn't meet a metric and they give you a story, and I used to buy into those. I used to listen to the story rather than focusing on the objective of what we need to do in order to grow. But once those metrics were established and those numbers that I told you with that example on the contracting business, um, one of my previous mistakes was that I used to buy into their stories. And they're not lying to you and they're not trying to make you feel bad, and your team is not trying to get at you. But sometimes you just gotta focus on the mission, focus on the vision of the company, focus on what is the objective, what is where you wanna I'm a big believer in the 30, 60, 90-day goals. Where do you wanna be 30 days from now? Where do you wanna be 60 days from now? And then where do you wanna be 90 days from now? That's one of my productivity systems. Like, where do I want to be? And I did the same thing with the contracting business, but I used to buy into their stories. If it wasn't because we created the metrics and it was understood, like it wasn't about the story anymore. It was more like, are the metrics have been met? If so, let's just focus on doing better, focus on the mission, and actually get to those metrics.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen that happening before. Have you ever had that opportunity that as you became a consultant, it kind of shifted the way you spoke and communicated as a leader to your team? Has that ever happened to you?
Um, you know, that happened to me when I was in my roles, when I really started to get into executive leadership. I I've had a lot of leaders that have taught me a lot. And I've had a lot of great leaders that teach me great things, and I've had a lot of great leaders that teach me not so great things. And um, I really, um, I really held that close to my heart when I would lead. I wanted to make sure that, I had certain principles. Like, um, I always would attack issues, not individuals. I wanted to create a space of psychological safety where it's okay to talk about issues in a free, open, dialogue. You don't have to be worried that, like, so if our sales are hurting, I would like for us to talk about our sales hurting versus employee X isn't pulling their weight.
Oh, yes.
And, and by doing that, by using that language, and then also another principle of mine too is that, like, I don't want to talk at my team. If I'm having a meeting, especially a leadership meeting, and I have all my department leaders in the room, I would much rather pose a question that gets the conversation going versus bring like a solution. Like, I think we should redo our website. Instead of saying, I think we should redo our website, I would rather go to the leaders and say, how do we increase visibility of our organization? How do we penetrate this market? And maybe a solution would be that we need to rebuild our website. Maybe another solution is that if we want to penetrate this market, then we need to go over there physically and throw events over there. Or we need to put digital ads that are just going towards this market or something like that. But if I would have come in and said, hey, we need to rebuild the website, everybody in the room, especially if you're a leader, all of your followers will follow. And they will say, okay, let's rebuild the website. But I don't like that style. I would rather pose that question and then hear what they have to say. You know what I mean? Because I may have that solution, but I'm sitting from a different perspective. You know what I mean? Like, the department heads, they're coming from different spaces. They're coming from the space of marketing. They're coming from the space of delivery, from the space of operations. And so I want to hear their input and see how creatively we can come up with a solution. So those are things that I really tried to pick up on and do as a leader.
That's very interesting. I'm actually gonna steal that from you. Not gonna lie to you. Hey, it was a good one. Okay, I like that. Instead of us, because I'm used to just like showing the metrics and have a conversation with my team,
Yeah.
and then I say any questions, comments, and concerns, and be welcome to like I am a big believer in constructive criticism.
Yeah.
So I like being criticized.
Yeah.
I know that sounds a little bit weird, but like some people need to understand that whenever somebody tells you something as a leader, it doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. It's just criticism. And it's up to you whether you allow it to take it personal or you construct from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my style. But I'm definitely gonna steal that from you. Like instead of showing the numbers and then telling them we need to do better on our website, I'll be basically asking because that sounds more discovery. Like you never
Yeah.
know what they know.
That's right.
Like
That's right.
eh,
And they don't, and that's a way to build buy-in. When they have, if I were to say, let's rebuild the website, they'll do what it is that they're told.
yes.
And
Yeah.
and that's not a leader. I've had that leader before, and I don't want to be that leader. I don't want to tell people what to do. I would rather us get together and collaborate because I put a lot of time, effort, and energy into building the best team. Like, you are here because you're the best at what you do. You are here because you're the best at what you do. So who am I to come in and tell you what to do? I would rather
Yes.
hear from you. And then if my marketing department head says, I have an idea, I think we should rebuild the website. I'm not even going to say, that's exactly what I was thinking. Say, oh, okay, why? Or when do you think we can have that done? Or how do you think we would do that? Who would we go with? And like, just ask more questions like that. But then when they complete that, they get the credit. It was their idea. They get to run with it. They have the buy-in, and we all win. Because everything, like the rising tide lifts all the boats.
They have the initiative.
Mm-hmm. And so that I really like that piece to like attack the issues, not the individuals. And I think that builds a lot of trust within your organization because then, what I saw is my leaders felt less responsible and felt more accountable. So if, the sales numbers were low, then I don't want my sales leader to feel the responsibility and the burden on his or her shoulders to where like it's defeating them, right? Like, and to feel like it's up to me only to solve this problem. It's more so you're accountable for those sales numbers, but you're not the only one that can lift those. So how can we all help so we can raise that number up?
That sounds like a really good strategy to guess. That sounds like a really good strategy. I like that. Yes.
Yeah, because I don't want them to be in fear of their job. That's not a healthy environment for anybody. And so if you live in fear, then you don't want to deliver those metrics. So I'm not just going to show you a bunch of metrics that I've put together. I would rather empower my leaders to say, we're going to have this meeting every week at this time on this day. So if that's going to be on Tuesday at 10 a.m., by Monday, close of business, I want you to fill out this slide, your portion of this slide. And that portion of this slide is your metric. I can absolutely go and get all those things, right? But I want them to put in that metric because that's the one that they own, and I really believe in that everybody should own their number and everybody has that capacity to lead.
Okay, that's very fair to say. And would you say that's actually part of the implementation when you do your consultation as, importing operating systems within an organization? Would you say that's part of it?
Oh, 100%. Because like you need, as part of implementing an organizational operating system, what you're trying to get to, because like some people will, if you don't have an operating system in your org and you go and you see an org that has an operating system, like this would happen to Charles and I all the time. People would come and they'd see like, oh, tell me about geekdom. Like, okay, cool. You have a few minutes? Yeah, come in the conference room. We'd show them 2 or 3 slides. They know everything about geekdom. They know where we've been. They know where we're at. They know where we're going. They know how we're measuring it. They know who's measuring what, who's responsible, and what we're going to do to get there. And we've done all of this in less than 10 minutes. And often I'll get people that see that and they're like, man, that scorecard is awesome. That organizer is awesome. That strategic plan on 2 pages is awesome. Like, could you do that in my company? And we could, but it took us a lot of time, effort, and energy to get to that point, right? Like
Yeah,
to
and you keep repeating that. So that means that right now, from everything so that means that to see those results,
yeah.
it takes months, right? So you build it, you build it, you build it, and before you see all of that, it takes months. Is what you're saying, right? So,
Well, less that it takes months, more that it takes a deep understanding of what you're
okay.
doing.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to understand that because if that is the case, I'm wondering how the journey goes with that. Because I know normally every time the operation gets imported and it, over time it changes and whatnot and to becomes into what it needs to be, I can only imagine what that journey even looks like. Like
Yeah,
that means that you're never bored at your job. That's for
no,
sure.
I'm never bored at the job. I mean, it honestly, like the way what my process looks like is first we build out a compass, and that's 6 levers terminology, and that compass is a 2 to 3 page document that tells you everything about the organization. It's got your mission, your vision, your values, your tenets, your beliefs, which I love beliefs. That is specific to the 6 levers framework, but it's something that that exists before the mission. So before you came up with your mission to build San Antonio one startup at a time, right? Like how did we get there? What were the things that we believed that needed to happen in order to get there? But once you build out that compass, the second part of that compass is the 3-year vision. And so that's where you build out. These are the 3 or 4 objectives that we want to complete in the next 3 years. So if we were starting this today, then we would say December of 2026, this is where we want to be. Here's the objective. We want to build a narrative around that on what it looks like. And then we want to build specific key results. How will we know, undisputed, how will we know that we've completed this objective or not? And it's got to be measurable key results. And once you have that, though, and that can, if you've already done work on this and stuff, we can get through that in a couple of weeks. But if you've never put intention around that, or if you're a new owner of an organization, or if you're going through a pivot, or you're going through a rebrand or an acquisition or something like that, then you got to put in some serious work to either revisit and refine those things or build them. And that can take a lot of time, depending on how much time you have, to work with me. But typically I can get a compass, that 2 to 3 page plan. I can get that done depending on the time that you can spend with me in about a quarter.
Okay, that's fair. That's very fair. Just wanted to understand that aspect because I'm not saying I'm a professional, but I have a little bit of experience when it comes to systems coming in place, and it's chaotic and not chaotic at the same time. It's fun but not fun at the same time. So it's a very, like I said, I know for sure that you're definitely not bored of your job.
No,
And I'm pretty sure that each individual company situation and everything is completely different. And because fundamentally every business is there's only 3 type. Fundamentally speaking, there's only 3 type of businesses: the ones that sell products and services, or just services. But even then, if you open up the compass, you find out that you're still in a different map.
Oh, yeah.
So the numbers are still gonna be different, even if it's fundamentally the same thing. So that alone already tells me that, again, I can see myself having fun with it.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, am I gonna be passionate enough? That's a whole different story. And are the audience listening to this, if they're interested in becoming an operations consultant, I mean, where is the passion behind this to continue that kind of journey?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fun in it too. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of reward to it too. Like, what would you say is a very key reward that you get from this that really keeps you going, keeps you like, I still love this despite the chaos. I still love this despite the fact that sometimes it's a very smooth 4 quarters, or it's a very smooth few weeks, or maybe not so smooth a couple weeks. So what's something that you definitely, keeps you loving it per se?
Oh, man.
Where do
I'll
you
tell
even
you that-
start?
I'll tell you that there's a lot of things I love about this, right? Like, I wanted to start my own business for, I've been working on this for, like 10 years. I've known I want my own business, but I didn't know what it was going to be. And I feel like I needed to do everything that I did up until I started. I think that the biggest reward for me in this work is seeing that aha moment where, a visionary, founder, an operator understands that this is when they can see this strategic plan on paper that's going to be distributed to the rest of the company, when they can see that and they have the realization that all of this stuff has been living in my head, but I couldn't articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't put it into 3 pages. I couldn't put it into a slide deck. And now I can. Now we have common language that we can talk about this stuff on. Now there's not so much transparency. Any organization that I work with, none of them come to me because everything is awesome in their organization.
No, that's 1,000% sure.
Yeah. So getting to that point where they realize, like, this is the solve, and now we figured it out. And then now now that we've done all this work on the back end, now it's time to implement and roll it out. And then we have this, big presentation, workshop-y thing where I come in and I introduce, myself as a consultant, and we're using the 6 levers framework, and I want to show you this is the mission of your organization. This is the vision. This is where we're going in the next 3 years, and you are a part of it. That part is that will never get old for me. You know what I mean? Because that if we do it right, then that moment is when everybody realizes this is why I'm here and I'm the right person for this thing.
That sounds awesome. That sounds like there's always a brand new adventure with it.
Oh, yeah.
And that again, we'll go back into it. I know for sure you're not bored of your job.
Dude,
No,
I'm not
1,000%.
bored.
No, that's one. And if anything, that's what I like about talking to business owners like yourself, entrepreneurs, and even me being a business owner. Like, there being lows and downs, there's been ups, but what really keeps it going is that there's always something brand new, and it's still basically about the same thing, but it's just there's always a brand new challenge, and as long as there's challenges, that's how you know that you're proceeding forward.
100%.
And then now that we're almost at the end of the podcast, I know that the audience, some of them may want to be an operations consultant. So briefly, right? I mean, you don't have to be very specific. More or less briefly, how would you recommend or give a small insight about how to get within the industry that you're on?
How to be a consultant?
Basically, yes. Operations consultant to be specifically.
If you want to be an operations consultant, get an operations job. Go be an operator. Understand the challenges. Climb the ladder as best you can. And, try and get especially executive operations understanding. I think also try and work with C-levels as best you can so you can understand what it's like to work on the business versus in the business. So you can understand what kind of reporting C-levels want, what kind of reporting board members want, and what kind of reporting you require from your individual contributors and your department heads. And but that's the biggest piece of advice I can give is that, get after it for a while, even if it's a 3 to 5 year plan where, I want to be a consultant and I will be a consultant in 2027. But right now I need to get those chops. That's being a consultant is, for me, it was hard because, you have imposter syndrome. Like, for me, that was big. Like, it was like, how am I going to go and help? I understand the organizations that I've worked in, but how am I going to go help a manufactured home company? How am I going to go help a automotive steel manufacturing company? I don't know anything about any of these businesses. And why would they trust me to come in and fix their organization? And I've never done this before. Well, I had to realize that that's not true. I have done this before. I've been doing this for years. It's just, I don't have to be an expert on your company, your industry, and what your industry does. I do have to be an expert on the framework, on the operating system, on how we get the probing questions to ask so that we can get the things that we need to fill out this strategic plan. And I wouldn't have all of that without experience. That stuff couldn't have been taught to me. I needed to go through it. I needed to like really feel it. So yeah, that's advice I would give is get after it. Get an operator role, talk to operators, learn other organizational operating systems, and see if you can help implement shadow.
That's very fair. Be a follower before you become a leader.
For sure, 100%.
Don't try to become a leader if you don't even know what it means to be a follower.
Right, 100%, 100%. I mean that helped me a ton, and also like, when I made the decision to be a consultant, one of my close friends, mentors, some of my colleagues, somebody I've worked with for a long time, I said, I'm thinking about becoming a consultant. He said, I think that you would be a great one. And he had been a consultant for years, right? A great consultant. And he was like, I think you would be a great consultant because there's two things that I think make great consultants. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to understand what it is that you're delivering. The second thing is you have to be trustworthy. You have to be relatable. You have to be somebody that people will trust their baby, like they will trust their organization with. And, those things I love that he gave me that feedback and insight because that did give me the courage and confidence to just go for it and see what happens. And it's working. I mean, I've gotten great clients. I've been able to build strategic plans. I'm already planning for Q3 and 4 of next year. So we're rocking and rolling.
That is awesome. I believe it. I definitely believe it. And to be honest with you, the fact that a great consultant even told you that you'll make a great one, I believe that even give you like a boost of like, okay, if this guy's telling me something, then that means that that's a really good feedback in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Like that definitely helps out. Like it's not just there's a big difference coming from some random guy. Yeah, man. I mean, you'll do great compared to an actual consultant who's in the business, who's in the industry. He knows the insights and he can tell, who's not that good, who's good, and who's average and who's great.
Yeah.
And that alone already changes the game for you. So that I know one thing for sure. If I was you and somebody tells me that, I'll be like, man, at this point I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, like you say it like that, like I'm already thinking about pursuing it, but you don't have to sell it to me.
Well, and the other important piece to that too is that same individual, and this is important to understand, that same individual would also tell me this isn't the right path for you.
Really?
If it wasn't, I'm confident that he would have told me like, I know that's what you want to do, but there might be other things that you can.
There's easier things that you can do.
Yeah.
And by easy, it doesn't mean that it is easy. It's just easier for you.
Yeah. There's other ways you can serve the community or something like that is a friend that would tell me that. Mm-hmm. And so, so that's what it was. I think, another piece of advice that I would give,
mm-hmm.
ask questions and actively listen. When somebody gives you feedback, your response is thank you. Whether you agree or disagree.
That's going to be a tough one for some people out here. It's like, yes, I totally agree.
Yep.
Or always admit that you might be in the wrong. So some individuals may say, okay, I'll circle back on it. But they're not.
Yeah.
Admitting your flaws is one of the biggest critics. Like you should be your biggest critics.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't give in to the haters. There might be some people that just throw you negative vibes for no reason. You know what I mean? But take it, consider the source whenever somebody's giving you that feedback. But always, for me, anytime anybody gives me feedback, it's thank you.
It's a thank you.
That's it. It's thank you.
That's very fair. Constructive criticism 101.
That's
what
right.
it is. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You suck and you're small. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, man. Oh, damn. I really appreciate you coming over, by the way, Phillips.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Especially giving insights about the industry, talking about your journey. I mean, there's a plethora of knowledge out there and you helping out the audience to identify more about what it means to be a consultant. I mean, that's what it means to be in the podcast of Born to Hustle. What ignites the hustle, what kept the hustle, and, are you happy with it? If not, then, There's always another hustle. There's always something that you can do to basically have a destination and an objective into your own goals.
Yeah.
And it's bound to change no matter what. Sometimes the change is for the better, or sometimes the hustle that you initiated, becoming an EOS. And then I'm pretty sure that when you became an EOS, it built who you are to be ready to be the next step.
Yep.
Like you just cannot. It's like not gonna say destiny, right? But it's just one of those steps of development in life.
Yeah.
And then now, before we end this, right? Anything else that you want to shout out for anything you want to promote? 30 seconds. Shout out, promote, or shout out. It can be about yourself. It can be about business. Anything at all that you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer and promoter of organizational design, organizational health and wellness, and operating systems. I'm here to help in any capacity. I won't take every client because not everybody needs a consultant. So if you feel like this might be something for you and you might be able to implement it yourself, or you feel like you just want to learn more about it, maybe you need a consultant, reach out to me. I'm philiphernandez.com. It's Philip with 2 L's. But yeah, reach out to me. I'm also a speaker, a facilitator. I could put on workshops, all the things. I think there was one other piece of feedback I was going to give you. But
Go for it.
Oh, there's a saying so I come from the startup community in San Antonio, right? I've been in the tech and startup collaborative community for the last decade. And there's a saying in that community that is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And for me, the problem that I was trying to solve is how do I help other operators, other C-levels, other founders? How do I help them realize the mission that's going to achieve their vision? My solution was to become an EOS implementer. If I would have fell in love with that solution, my heart would have been broken and I would have given up on my journey. But because I stayed true to falling in love with the problem, how do I help? Then when that was no longer a solution, it opened up the door for 6 Levers to be the solution for me.
Awesome. I actually love that piece of content before we actually end this. And once again, thank you so much for coming, brother.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. I really, really do. I feel like I've learned a lot. Not gonna lie, I have. And coming from you, that is very powerful because not every day you learn. I feel very well informed right now. Sometimes you learn one thing. I learned several things. So I really appreciated you coming over, and I appreciate everything that you just shared.
Thank you,
and
man.
also, guys, if you guys are going to reach out to him, as he said on the sponsor, just go ahead and go to his website. I think it's Philip with 2 L's, phillipshernandez.com.
That's it.
And then just go ahead and just reach out to him. And I'm pretty sure that he would love to just give you a very honest and straightforward response. And prayerfully, that would do 2 things. And either you're going to have a consultant and that's going to help you leverage, or you have learned some really key insight that will help you direct into the future of what you can do to leverage your business. And that, guys, this is Roham Carrion, Born to Hustle, and thank you so much.